Hey everyone, Kevin here. Welcome back to the channel. So today I thought I'd do something a little bit different. So as you guys know, we talk a lot about investing in IPOs on the channel, and we're still going to talk a lot about investing in IPOs on the channel going forward. But today I want to do something a little bit different based on some of the questions that I've had. And, I've been asked a lot, like, what are some of the stocks that I own? What's my investing strategy? And I've shared a little bit of this on some of the live streams that we've done, which it's been a little while since we've done a live stream. I have to get one back on the schedule pretty soon. So anyways, I thought let's talk about one of the stocks that I own. And again, I can share with you some of the reasons why I own it and what's some of the rationale of having it. And just up front, know that the reason I'm doing this video is not to promote this company or the stock. I never try to do that. I never tell you what to buy or not to buy, as you guys know. It's really just, again, sharing some of that information that I look at, because some of you seem to be interested in that. Having said that, what I'm going to talk about today is Boeing stock. Now, you might be surprised when I tell you this, but of all the stock that I own, Boeing is the one company I don't worry about on a day-to-day basis. Now, they actually have earnings coming out this week, and I'll be the first to tell you, like, no matter really what happens out of that, out of the earnings report, barring something crazy, it's a company I'm still going to hold no matter what. And again, it's just really one I don't worry about. I mean, I also own Amazon, AMD, Tesla, all really good stocks. In the long run, have been much better for me than Boeing. But the thing with Boeing is there's a couple things about it that makes it very attractive to me, and so I'm going to share that with you guys. Now, obviously, the company has had a lot of issues over the past couple of years, some of them self-inflicted, and none being more than the 737 MAX, and of course, the pandemic. But it's still a company I feel really good owning, and it meets one of the criteria I have when it comes to investing in stocks, and that's getting the stock at a good price. So I love growth stocks. However, I approach it as a value type investor. And because of that, a lot of times it's hard for me to get the stocks at the prices I want them. So again, when we talk about IPOs, there's a lot of them that I like that I don't get in right away, just because, again, it's hard to say what the value is. I can guess what the value is, and then it trades way higher. I don't reach for stocks in that regard. Sometimes they will come back down to me. Sometimes they don't. But after the stock trades for a while, sometimes, there's an opportunity to get it at a better price, or, I learn more about where the financials are and what they're doing business-wise. And so even though I might pay a little bit higher later on, it makes it more of a safer buy at that time. So let's talk a little bit about Boeing in particular. Again, how it meets that first criteria, which again, getting it at a good price. So looking at the chart, you can see a pretty long history of how the stock traded, going back to the early 2000s. And you can see as we get closer to more recently, the stock peaked in early 2019. And actually the all-time high was in March, and it was around $440. So at that point, of course, they had the issue with the 737 MAX. And at this point, I did not buy the stock. I did not own the stock. And so, after it peaks, it starts to go down. And it makes sense because they're going to take this airplane out of service. And obviously, this is the plane that's driving the sales. Now, I just still did not buy the stock at this point because at this point it just happened. Not sure what's going to go. So I start trying to educate myself through the summer. And as I'm learning more about the 737 MAX, what sort of became clear is it probably wasn't a great airplane as far as a design. So while it probably, in my mind, would have made sense for them just to scrap it and just go to something new, that doesn't make sense. And if they did that, obviously the stock price would really drop. So at this point, I'm still not getting into it. But as the summer goes on, as we're getting into the fall, it looks like the regulators are going to approve some type of a fix to get the airplane back in service, and talking about doing software things. So at this point, I'm still watching it because I think it's taking a while, but feel like it's going to happen. And then, so at this point, I'm really watching it. It's trading around that 370 range, and then it drops because of these emails that are released that talk about some of the things that they knew. And while it was a disaster from a PR perspective, when I got that information, it didn't seem like anything that really fundamentally changed their situation. So at this point, on October 21st, 2019, I bought my first shares of Boeing stock at $329.84. Now, what happened was it immediately went back to about the 370. So at that point, I'm already up, and I'm feeling pretty good. But at this point, knowing until the 737 MAX gets cleared, this is about the highest the stock's probably going to trade. So I'm watching it, but I feel like it's going to happen. And so, I keep watching, and stock starts to, people are getting antsy near the end of the year. Of course, revenue is down for that year, 2019. It bounces back a little bit in January, and again, I'm a little bit above where I bought it at. I'm not worried about it because I feel like it's going to be a good company to own in the long run. Because no matter this mistakes that they've had recently, it just, there's another reason, which I'm going to get to in a minute, of why I think it's a good company. Well, of course, the thing you couldn't predict was the pandemic, and so that comes and the stock starts to plummet. So I jump on it really quick. So my first post-pandemic buy is on March the 10th, and where I bought it at $240 a share. And I'm thinking, okay, well that's good because I'm thinking dollar cost averaging, it's bringing it down. And then it keeps dropping. So on March the 12th, it drops down to $169.36. So I put another buy order in. Because again, I'm thinking, boy, it's dropped another like third of its value already in like 2 days. And so I watch it drop some more, and I point thinking, wow, this is insane. And then it gets under $100. So on March the 20th, I bought it, I don't know if I can get it right here on the chart, but I bought it for $95.89. Okay, and the only thing, hindsight being 2020, I wish I would have bought more. But at this point, I'm also buying other stocks because I see a lot of value out there. So I'm buying stocks like Amazon and Tesla, stocks that have made more money for me than Boeing has made at this point. So I didn't want to go all in on Boeing, although I like the stock. And so I stopped buying it there. At this point, my dollar cost averaging of the shares, because again, most of the stocks were still bought in that first allotment, $329. So right now, my dollar cost averaging number is about $256.23. So for a short period of time, I was actually ahead. As you can see, the stock was trading at around $269 at one point. And so, but again, was going to keep it because I can still see the value. I'm thinking in my mind, had an all-time high of $440. The plane is now obviously allowed to fly. More orders are coming in. They're still suppressed a little bit because of the pandemic, but as that continues to ease up with restrictions and people start flying more and airlines needing more planes and whatnot, I just really see that there's the potential. So to me, it's a long-term hold. Now, just for a couple other things to really drive home this point. So if you look at Boeing and you look at their revenue, so going back to 2018, so this is before the MAX issues, they were making $101 billion, for that year. Now in 2019, after the MAX gets put up basically about a third into the year, the revenue comes in at $76 billion. But again, this is before the pandemic. And then this past year, for 2020, they reported $58 billion of revenue. And again, so this is where most of the year, again, the plane not flying and the pandemic. So no one's buying anything. All the airlines, no one's buying. All these orders are on hold, particularly since the pandemic is hurting airlines as well. So they're not able to buy planes. And again, do they want to buy a plane that hasn't even been cleared yet? So at this point, you're looking at this and thinking, okay, if they can get the revenue back to 2018 levels, which it's probably doable. It may not be in a year, maybe not in 2 years, but you can see that they were there before and they can very well get there again. But then you want to look at some valuation measures. So again, this is using Yahoo Finance, and keep in mind it's not always the most up to date. But if you look at like their price to sales, so currently they have them at a 2.33. And so if you look at the market cap of $137 billion and you consider that their sales for last year were $58 billion, basically that's how you're getting a 2.3 number. That's a pretty low price to sales. Now, there's a lot of things you got to keep in mind. Boeing took in a lot of debt last year, and so, it's not apples to apples as to where it was. And obviously, the near-term outlook isn't as strong as it was at the end of 2018. So, you're going to have to wait a little bit. But if you're like me that tends to look at companies as a long-term investment, this is a company where I just don't see how it doesn't come back. Now that leads me to the second thing I look at when investing in companies, and that is the competition or if the company has a moat. So when you look at Boeing, they sort of do have one competitor, one big competitor, and that's Airbus. But when you're talking about just competitors in the U.S., Boeing really doesn't have any. Nobody, is involved in making the airplanes at the level they do, the big airplanes. Nobody is involved also in aerospace and has the national security contracts that they do. So you're talking about a company that really doesn't have a peer. Now, it doesn't mean like you don't have a SpaceX out there. You don't have some smaller airplane makers and whatnot. And of course, Airbus is a competitor. But when you think about how important Boeing has been to the U.S. as far as their GDP, anywhere from 1% to 2% of it is directly related to Boeing. It's a pretty important company. So when all the issues were happening from the safety perspective of the 737 MAX, a lot of Congress was out there and they were talking and let's get them down. And again, and I'm all for safety. But at the end of the day, no one wants Boeing to go away. So there's a couple big things here to think about too. Number one is Boeing has really been one of the biggest exporters, if not the biggest exporters that the country has. And two, 80% of its suppliers are US based. So that means there's a lot of companies that depend on Boeing to sell their services or their products. And so if you take out Boeing or Boeing goes away, you're having a lot of issues with other businesses. So you get that trickle-down effect where you really harm the economy. So no one wants Boeing to go away. So in the back of my mind, I think about this is why a company that, long-term, it could meet that definition of too big to fail. Now we can argue whether that's right or wrong. It sort of reminds you about the whole GM bailout and whatnot. But if those companies go away, there really is a lot of economic fallout. And again, not just for employees of Boeing, which there's a ton of, but also all those suppliers. And so when we saw what's happening with GM, think about what's going on with Boeing, it just makes sense that this is not a company that's going to go away. So while the government's going to be there with the regulations to make sure that the company is following safety protocols, and again, that's vitally important, we need that. At the end of the day, the importance to the gross domestic product, it being a huge major exporter, the fact that it has national defense contracts, it's involved in space, no one other company does that. It's just so important. So and when I look at a company, I look at Boeing and think it really doesn't have, a direct competitor, definitely not a direct U.S. competitor. So it's a company, you might be surprised when I say this, that it's the one I don't worry about. And again, I have Amazon, as I said, and Tesla. Both companies are strong companies. They've done really well for me. But where Tesla is going to have some more competition in some ways, Amazon, there's people out there that can do it. No one's nowhere close to them. But Boeing right now, I think for anybody to really step up to being that level, I just don't see it. Whereas you could potentially say, well, okay, somebody in e-commerce could catch up to Amazon, potentially. It's probably not happening anytime soon, but it's just one of those considerations that I think about. So that's why I have Boeing stock, and it definitely meets the criteria I'm looking for. I got it at a discount because, again, it was trading at $440. I got in first at $329, and right now I'm dollar cost averaging around $256. And also, it's a company really without true competition. So it may not be the company that has the biggest returns going for me forward, particularly anytime soon, but it's one of those companies that, I know I'm going to hold it long term, and it's going to be a company that's going to continue to grow, it's going to do better for me, and barring another pandemic or something else crazy happening, which again, just don't see it. So that's why I'm all on Boeing stock. So anyways, do you guys own any stocks like this, or a stock that you feel is very similar to Boeing, or how I feel about Boeing? If so, let me know in the comments. It's probably one I've thought about, or maybe if it's a smaller one I haven't, I'll look into. Anyways, I hope you like this. It's something a little bit different. And if you did, please push that like button. Really important to the channel, and lets me know you even like it so I can do more videos like this, because I do own some more stocks and be more than happy to talk about them as well if you're interested. And if this is the first time you've been here, maybe you're just somebody that owns Boeing and wanted to watch a video on it, so you watch the channel for the first time, definitely consider subscribing. We talk about a lot of things here. We definitely talk about stocks, particularly those new companies and for opportunities. But we also talk about ways to save money and invest, and there's just so many things that we talk about. I really don't like to be pigeonholed into one thing. And again, the things that you guys like to talk about are definitely what I talk mostly about. So anyways, with that, keep in mind Boeing again having their earnings on Wednesday before the market opens. So again, no matter what happens, I'm staying in on Boeing stock. So again, not telling you should buy it, but just again trying to share some of my strategies because again, I guess some of you think that was interesting to hear. So with that, hope you have a good rest of the day, and I'll talk to you guys soon. Take care.